Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really striking, deeply personal story about what happens when emotional boundaries are pushed to the absolute brink. We're looking at a case study of a spouse's so-called work friend and how that dynamic can morph into a massive threat to a marriage. It's a fascinating, honestly heart-wrenching look at trust, where the lines get blurred and that agonizing moment a partner finds out the actual truth hiding right there inside their spouse's phone. So let's just dive right into it. To really grasp the gravity of this whole situation, we've got to start with this one crushing phrase. This is the exact moment that completely shattered the author's sense of security. Before seeing these words, she genuinely thought she was just being paranoid, maybe a little traumatic. But reading this, it totally transformed her reality. It forced her to face this harsh, undeniable truth about where her husband's head was really at. But how did they even get to this point? Section 1. The early warning signs, when just a coworker becomes an obsession. Okay, so every breach of trust has an origin story, right? And this one starts in the most mundane place possible, the daily work environment. If we map out the timeline, this dynamic kicked off just a few months ago. The husband works one-on-one every single day in a male-dominated field, and he ends up developing a close friendship with a younger, single coworker named Catherine. But look at how fast this escalates. It goes from a brand new workplace friendship straight into late-night texting and weekend obsession, which ultimately builds up to a massive breaking point last night. Let's zoom in on those middle warning signs. What is absolutely wild about these early red flags is just how insidious they are. We aren't talking about grand, sweeping gestures here. It's the tiny, everyday intrusions. A random song comes on the radio. Oh, Catherine would love this. Driving past a burger joint. He's got to mention that Catherine loves their hamburgers. He even started venting to his wife about the guys Catherine dates. I mean, that is a deep, personal investment in another woman's weekend love life. Toss in some random late-night texts about minor work stuff that absolutely could have waited until Monday morning, and suddenly you have this incredibly intrusive presence literally taking over their home life. Section 2. Blurring the boundaries. The overreacting defense. So as this emotional enmeshment gets deeper and deeper, the lines between professional colleague and personal confidant just totally evaporate. And when the wife finally confronted him, she was met with a classic defense mechanism. Anytime she brought up how uncomfortable she was with his obsession over Catherine's love life or questioned those weird late-night texts, he'd completely blow it off. He acted like she was totally overreacting. Guys, this is textbook gaslighting. He's actively making her question her own perception of reality, totally minimizing her very valid concerns, and basically making her feel like this whole thing is just made up in her head. Section 3. The Midnight Discovery. Seeking the truth in the dark. And that brings us to the critical climax of this story. The wife's anxiety finally hits a breaking point. It becomes so much to bear that she actually waits until he's fast asleep to check his phone, and she reads through his entire text history with Catherine. Now, what she found wasn't some undeniable let's have an affair proposition, but man, it was incredibly damaging anyway. The text logs were completely filled with uncomfortable sexual innuendos and dark jokes back and forth. It's exactly the kind of highly inappropriate banter that he would absolutely never tolerate if the roles were reversed, and she was the one texting another guy. The real kicker here is the sheer hypocrisy of these intimate exchanges. While the husband is playing the innocent, I'm just a good guy role at home, he is actively engaging in speculative, highly sexual conversations about his coworker. They are literally making comments about how Catherine probably behaves in bed. He isn't shutting down the flirting, he is totally leaning into it. And honestly, this sets the stage for the final shattering blow. Section 4. The devastating truth. The message that broke everything. Amidst all the flirting, the inside jokes, the constant daily check-ins, there was this one specific exchange just sitting there in the text history. It starts with this message from Catherine. Out of nowhere, she texts him saying she just does not understand why people lose their minds over breakups and divorces. Now, that is a casual, maybe philosophical question, but come on, it's highly inappropriate to ask a married man that you're already sharing sexual innuendos with. But it was his reply that changed absolutely everything. This was his immediate response. Just imagine reading your husband's exact calculated words like this. It felt like a massive slap in the face. He literally reduced the potential destruction of their entire life together to a mere stepping stone. In his own words, a divorce would suck, but he'd be perfectly fine because at least he'd have an awesome kid from it and he'd be able to go out and date a hot girl. Just wow. He completely dismissed the value of their marriage, treating their union as entirely disposable in a private, late-night chat with another woman. Section 5. The gaslighting effect. Words versus actions. This whole midnight discovery really forces us to look at the agonizing contrast between what the husband claims to be doing and what he's actually doing in the shadows. This dissonance is brilliant at showing the psychological toll. On the one hand, you've got his excuses, right? He claims he's just checking in because she has no family in the city. He hides behind this facade of being a good man who naturally looks out for lonely people and tells his wife she's just overreacting. But on the other hand, you have his concrete actions. The constant sexual jokes, the inappropriate comments about her in bed, the late-night texting that actively disrespects his wife. The huge gap between these two realities is exactly what causes a partner to feel like they are literally losing their mind.
Section 6. Trapped in a dilemma. What comes next?
We're wrapping up this explainer by looking at the agonizing fallout of this discovery. The truth is finally out, but the author is now completely emotionally trapped. She's living in a house with a man who privately views the potential destruction of their marriage as just a minor inconvenience standing in the way of him dating a hot new girl. Think about that. Her sense of having a secure, beautiful family has been totally shattered by a partner who is secretly towing this dangerous line of infidelity, all while demanding her absolute trust. Which leaves us with this final, incredibly heavy question. She holds the undeniable proof of her partner's betrayal, but getting it meant she had to cross a boundary herself by secretly snooping through his phone. So what does she do? Does she confront him with the texts, knowing it's going to trigger an explosive battle over privacy and trust? Or does she silently plan her next move to protect herself and her kid? It is a profound, messy dilemma that really challenges all of us to consider, what would you do if the security you believed in was suddenly ripped out from under you? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I will leave you to ponder that very difficult choice.